No, I've made the commitment here and I've made the decision that I'm going to choose a different path and to continue to walk that out and be faithful with this.
Temptation for me was to ask you like every 5 minutes, how about now? Are you tempted now?
Hey, I'm giving you an open door to come to me and clear the air there. And I'm promising you that I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to be honest with you about, when you have those sort of questions.
Welcome to Hope Reforged, the podcast where we champion married couples from pornography addiction to a life of freedom, restoration, and unity. We know the road can be tough, but we're here to walk it together. It's time to break free from the chains of fear and shame. Experience Hope Reforged.
So today, we want to talk about how a marriage thrives in light of a tragedy, right? So how a marriage not only survives, but, turns into a very healthy, a very beautiful thing, just like the kintsugi art where the pottery is broken and then it gets remade, and with this gold inlay and this beautiful gold pattern webbing on the piece of pottery that turns it into a work of art that is more valuable and interesting than it was when it was pre-smash, basically.
Yeah.
So what? Because as we were thinking through this, we started realizing there were some real factors and components that came into our relationship as we were walking this through that I think can translate to help other people learn, well, what are the parts of this that really, help us, turn this into a positive thing in the end, and it's going to be a difficult process. I don't want to downplay that. There's some hard work to be done. There's some difficult emotional process and go through. But we just want to talk about, what that looks like, I think. So.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Okay.
I think one of the first words that pops into my head is grace, 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 grace.
Yep. There are a lot of parallels to, the Lord bringing us through a process of restoration with Him that has to happen in this sort of situation. So,
no doubt. Yeah.
So what's the first thing that pops into your head when you think about dealing with this sort of an issue? And again, we're talking, I think, at this point, like either there's been a confession or this sin has been exposed in some way, shape, or form. I think confession is always better.
Yes.
If you bring that to the table,
100%.
it makes it
Yes.
so much, the process works so much better and so much easier.
Discovery is less ideal. More pain there for sure. But so first we have to come into agreement. Are we moving forward with this relationship or are we not?
Yeah.
And there are times when it's actually more beneficial to not.
Yep.
But you and I thankfully were in a place where we determined to move forward with our relationship. And, I would say
Kinda.
there was you're right.
Because I had a plan and it didn't involve moving forward.
But you were willing to try. So both partners have to be willing. And there's nothing sadder than having one partner who's willing and one who's not. But sometimes, like I said, sometimes that's a road that you just can't go. You can't go forward unless both are
I think
in agreement.
I think in our relationship, your response kind of like encouraged me too. Your initial God response of, well, let's get divorced. And you were like, no, we're not. Have you tried everything? Are you going to
Counseling and
yeah, I'm not going to agree to this until you have tried everything.
so let's say the people who are listening to this now are just like, yeah, I want to try. We're willing to try. So that's if you're kind of on the fence, I hope that this will kind of push people or encourage people to go ahead and try anyway.
And I will say too, we have been witness to marriages where they have drawn that decision out, where they were not able to get past and provide the forgiveness to the other person. We just saw that whole thing just evolve years over years, and that they never were able to forgive. And it ended in divorce anyway, even after all that fighting. It's a sad thing to see, and I think you need to have an assessment of, not that maybe you've got the full revelation of everything you're going to go through, but if you are in a place where you can't grant the forgiveness to the other person, or you can't ever see yourself granting that forgiveness, you may be setting yourself up for failure. So forgiveness is a huge component of it, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. So let's go through
I know with a huge stepping stone in that direction of restoration and freedom was your level of transparency. So that was very beautiful looking back on it. You started building trust, and you kind of got into the practice of confession. Really, you didn't shy away. I mean, I'm sure it was hard at first. You didn't know how I was going to react whenever you would confess that you've failed again.
Yeah, you'd ask the question. I made a commitment at that point that I was going to continue to be transparent to you about the process and what I was involved in. When I failed, and that process of walking out of it. But yeah, transparency is a huge important thing. It's critical for continuing to start to build that trust level back up again. You've got to remain transparent with the other person about where you're at, and keep it, the honesty, which is our second thing. And I think those two go hand in hand. You've got to be committed to disclosure, transparency, and be honest about it. And you can't keep things back. You can't give half truths. You can't keep things hidden. It's got to be full on, like, you're walking around naked all the time sort of thing, just full disclosure. Here's everything, nothing's hidden anymore. And making the commitment to have that factor with your spouse, because you have kept it in the dark and hidden, and now it's got to be out there, and you've got to prove that you can be trusted.
Do you think that God's pleased with that?
Do I think that God is pleased with that? Of course. I mean, that's what he wants from us too. I mean,
why? Why
is God pleased with that?
Yes. I'm asking.
Well, okay, put me on the spot. So I go back to Genesis, right? Adam's in the garden, and it's not like we're hiding anything. We're not really hiding anything from God, right?
True.
I mean, it's hubris on our part to think that we have that capability to hide anything from God. But here's Adam. He's fallen. He's eaten the apple or whatever, and he's sown fig leaves, and he's trembling in the bushes. And God's, where's Adam? Like he doesn't really know where he is, and he's like, I'm hiding. So I think if he had just, it would have been I don't know if it would have been a different conversation, but I think the Lord would have been more pleased if he had been standing out in the open and, hey, messed up, and there would have been, I don't know how the conversation would have gone, but I think God would have been more pleased with that reaction to it, as opposed to him cowering in the bushes. I think there's, you look at what David's response, and I think that was one of the things that made that whole relationship between God and David special, is David's reaction, David's response to his failings and his shortcomings, and the Lord bringing that, to when he was faithful to bring it up to David. Hey, you've fallen here, and David's response was always, immediate, running, sobbing.
That's a great point. So when I think Nathan the prophet came to David and gave him this story about a lamb that was very precious to its owner, that was stolen, and basically Nathan was giving him his story about how he stole another man's wife. He stole Bathsheba.
He was giving him a metaphor.
Uh-huh.
But David didn't know that. He thought he was being told about somebody stealing the sheep, and he was all upset about it, and he was ready to go like knock somebody's head off over it. And then, the reveal, oh, you're actually the guy.
Yeah, you're actually the thief. Well, God gave him a choice of, do you want me to deal with you, or do you want humankind to deal with you? And I love David's response. It just makes me admire him so much, because he said, I want you to deal with me, God.
Yeah.
Because of that level of trust that David had in God. He chose God's judgment, and God could judge him in whatever way he wanted to.
Even though it was going to be painful and ugly and
man's judgment, the consequences from man would have been more finite.
Well, and I think too, like David didn't really care so much what man thought, right? He cared what God thought.
He wasn't afraid of man.
Right.
I don't think.
Yeah.
So he was afraid of God, but it was a holy fear. It was an awe and an amazement in God. So I'm sorry, I got us totally off track, but I think that honesty is something that the Lord honors. Okay, give permission for the spouse to ask questions. So you talk about being committed to honesty.
Yeah.
But you also came to me and you said, you know what, Angela, if you're ever suspicious or doubting or having fear, come and ask me and I'll tell you.
Yeah. Well, so what the enemy is going to try and do, right, is plant, well, can you trust him, and speaking to you about me,
fear is off the charts at the beginning for sure.
And so, then the enemy is going to be speaking to you about, well, he's fallen back into this, and, he doesn't really, and so there's all sorts of lying happening to you about this. So I knew, when you start feeling those, I mean, not only should you go to God with those, but also, hey, I'm giving you an open door to come to me and clear the air there. And I'm promising you that I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to be honest with you about, when you have those sort of questions, but I'm giving you permission, and therefore I'm extending grace to you for you to be able to come to me with those sort of doubts and those sort of questions. And I'm not going to hold it against you.
Did you ever lie when I came to you and asked you if you had been tempted?
I mean, the temptation was there for sure, to like, because I think you just kind of got this built-in hidden this response to hide that sort of.
Grab the fig leaf.
Grab the fig leaf, right?
Put it on.
Right. And so there's always that conscious, no, I don't want to. I'm making a commitment to do something different here, and I'm continuing to make that conscious decision to be open and honest. So the temptation, I think, was always there to, she's asking you, what are you going to respond? And then saying, no, I've made the commitment here, and I've made the decision that I'm going to choose a different path, and to continue to walk that out and be faithful with that. But I think every time the question was asked, there's kind of that little, yes, no, you're running through that little thought matrix.
Pucker up.
Right.
The temptation for me was to ask you like every 5 minutes, how about now? Are you tempted now?
How about now?
Now? Yeah. Eventually I got, as trust was being built, by you being honest of, yes, I was tempted. No, I didn't go there on the computer or whatever, or I did go to the computer.
Yeah, because there were those times.
And look at porn. As trust was being rebuilt, I was learning not to always go to you with that question. And sometimes I would start, okay, I'm just going to ask God to take this for me because I can't handle this. I can't keep, staying in a place of fear for anybody is unhealthy. So he did guide me in helping me to trust him more and more. So there's giving permission for the spouse to ask those questions. It's just the bare bones of rebuilding that foundation, but it's a great start. It's a great start.
And again, this takes a commitment on both people's part. I mean, as the person who's created the offense, right, you've got I think a pretty big responsibility to start working and building back that level of trust. And you've got to be willing to open yourself up to these sort of things, to start building that trust back up again. And it's a painful thing. It takes work on your part, and you've got to be committed and open to making that process on your side if this is going to work.
And I had the choice of whether or not to believe you.
Yeah.
When you told me, nope, I haven't been tempted, I haven't looked, I haven't.
Yep.
Like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on. I just got to make that decision. All right. He said no, I'm going to believe him this time.
Right.
Then the other one is, this is a big topic. So the trapped spouse, the one who's in the addiction, the one who's in the addiction. All right. Are you going to lay out measurable goals like benchmarks? What are you willing to do? Come on, buddy.
Right. Yeah. So, and this is I think as a couple, you both need to sit down and process through, what are the benchmarks that you want to see towards healing here, right? Because you don't want to just let the spouse okay, you've got a blank check here to work through this process. I'm independent of it, and go take care of this, right? And we've seen relationships where that has been the spouse's response is, this is your problem, not my problem. Go get it taken care of, and and then you let me know when you're done, sort of thing, right? And it's your stuff and not my stuff.
Which is against unity. I just want to bring that up. If God has made us one in sickness and in health, for better or worse, we are married, we are one. We got to work through it together to really fulfill His vision for the marriage.
Yeah.
To really fulfill that ultimate, that ultimate expression of marriage.
Well, and I mean, it's like you can't. I mean, if you've got again, I'm going to make another boat analogy here because I like boats. But if you've got a catamaran and one of the holes has got a hole in it, right? I mean, you can't just say, okay, well, you go fix that hole and I'm going to keep on sailing. I mean, that ship's going down, So you need to realize that you're tied to this thing together. You both need to work on fixing and that damage and do that repair together.
You're so funny.
I know. I like ships. I like boats.
You like big ships.
I like big ships, and I cannot lie. Uh-huh.
We're supposed to be talking about a very serious topic here.
I think it takes a sense of humor. I mean, this is not on our list, but it takes a sense of humor sometimes just to deal with this sort of stuff. You got to laugh.
Oh, man, you got to breathe deeply every once in a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so commitment.
And I mean, we certainly had the chance to learn to laugh with each other, and I think that was an important thing too.
I don't remember that at all.
Well, somewhere in that process, we developed it because we do it now, even when we're trying to do a podcast. It just slips out.
Today's episode of Hope Reforged is brought to you in part by C12, a nationwide mentoring framework of transformation for Christian business leaders. Find community at joinc12.com.
All right, so you've got some goals. What are some of those goals? What are those benchmarks?
So again, like I was saying, I think you have to, as a couple, you guys have to come together and make some agreements that, if this happens, what are going to be the consequences of that?
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So if I do go back and look at porn, am I sleeping on the couch? Am I going to move out of the house for a couple of days? Am I going to give you $100 to go spend? I don't know what it is, right? I think you as a couple need to come together with some sort of agreement, but there has to be some sort of, I think, relationship consequences to, continuing to walk in failure there, right? If you're not making some sort of commitment that I'm going to continue to work this out, and there's got to be some grace there too. I think, you don't want to, on the person who's trying to work through their brokenness to get out of this, it's not going to be an instant fix, and there has to be a realization of that and some grace for that.
It's not, but when you said that, every woman who's listening went, wait, what? There's got to be some grace. Like that immediately, everybody goes, wait, pause, slam on the brakes. Like when you say that, what is that? What does grace look like?
I don't mean like, okay, oh, well, he's gone back to it again. It's okay. I'm just saying, understand from the get-go that any sort of addiction that somebody's working through is not going to be an instant and cold turkey and never again. It's once and done. This is a process of the person working through their brokenness, through their wounds, and learning new habits so that they don't turn to this again. And that's not an instant, the ship's going this way and now it's going back the other way. It's turning, you don't ever want to see the ship like, okay, I got this far and now I turned 2 degrees instead of 180, and this is good. Right. So that's why you want to put some milestones in place. That's why you want to have a process of consequences and stuff in place so that, if the ship stops turning, you've got something in place for that.
So, but is this something that's let's come up with that list of consequences
together,
now.
Yeah.
If this happens, then you're going to lose your smartphone for a week, or you're not going to have any online access for the next whatever days.
We'll get down to this, but there's a whole list of things that should happen. When the confession's been made, I think another important component of that is, there needs to be safeguards put in place.
Yes, but I'm just saying it needs to be very clear. If this happens, then here's the consequence. Yeah. And that's not where you're suggesting grace happens. This is what we've agreed to together.
I'm not saying if you guys have agreed on a set of consequences and, I slipped up, but you shouldn't apply these consequences to me because of grace, right? That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's let's set up some boundaries so that there's respect and oh gosh, who was it? Danny Silk put together a great teaching about, you put safeguards around whatever you value. So if you're valuing your family's health and security and your marriage, put safeguards around it, put boundaries around it so that something can't come in and steal it, kill it, destroy it,
So when I'm saying there needs to be grace, what I'm saying is understand that this is going to be a process. It's not an instantaneous fix, and that there's going to be some times where he's going to mess up. And again, you put safeguards in place, you put consequences in place for when that happens. But just know, that this is not, like I said, it's not a on-off switch that gets flipped.
Yeah.
So, and just be prepared for that.
So some of the safeguards, tracking software, spouse has the passwords.
Yeah,
spouse creates passwords.
Covenant Eyes is a great thing. Even built in within the iPhones and stuff now, there's the ability to, give your wife the password to that, and then you can block access to certain apps. You can block access to websites. You can, the smartphones are great because you got stuff like Uber and other things that are very helpful. But then at the same time, there's also access to a lot of stuff that you don't want. So just diving into that and learning, what level of, maybe the smartphone just goes away and you get a dumb phone, worst case scenario, I don't know what the answer is there. You guys have got to work through, all the devices that you've got, what needs to happen on there to make a level of safety happen. And it has to be something where, it's out of the control of the spouse who is in the failure here, right? If it's like, okay, well, you're just going to trust me to go ahead and put these safeguards in place and I've got the password to it. Well, that's not a safeguard. That's
setting yourself up for failure.
That's putting yourself in a fence and then giving yourself the key so you can get out of the fenced-in area, right? That's not a safeguard.
There's another, you mentioned Covenant Eyes. There's another one called Freedom Fight.
Mm-hmm.
They have one of our amazing friends who also ministers in the freedom from porn arena. They have Freedom Fight is their recommendation. There's a 30-day version of that goes after. I'm sorry. It goes after the roots of porn use. There's a 30-day version that's available on YouTube, YouVersion Bible app. Gosh, YouTube.
Okay.
Right. It's thefreedomfight.org, and you can create there's a free account, and then I believe there's another more advanced version. So it's more than blocking and monitoring. So check that out for sure. And I would recommend that the spouse who has been hurt by all this activity should not be the one that gets the reports from Covenant Eyes or Freedom Fight, because let me just say this: if the spouse is getting these reports, it can just flare up a whole lot of emotions. It's great if the mentor or the counselor, like if a few other people have that report. Maybe the wife does get the report from Covenant Eyes, but make sure a couple other people are as well, because she may be in a place where she's just like, forget it.
Again,
I can't deal with this anymore.
That comes down to the nature of the relationship of the individuals, their personalities and everything, and what they're capable of handling. I think it you need to have the sensitivity to realize whether you are a person where these reports would benefit you or they would hinder you.
Yeah. I didn't want to see it personally. I was just
you did it first.
Man. I did it first, but then it's just like, no, I'm going through too much to
deal with this. Yeah. And that leads us to another important point, like the support, having, getting involved in a small group, having either a counselor or a pastor or a mentor or somebody that you can be in submission to, that you can be accountable to. And again, accountability is not calling somebody up and, hey, I fell again, and I just wanted to let you know. It's calling them up, as you're heading down the path toward that, and saying, hey, I'm feeling these urges, and I'm under this stress, and I'm feeling like I want to go look at porn. Can you pray with me? Can you help redirect me or give me something else to focus on here?
That's something that God has been talking to you about recently, of how you're not equipped.
Oh, yeah. Do we want to go? I don't know that anybody's going to get that movie reference. It's from a very obscure movie. But yeah, it was something God spoke to me recently about, you're not equipped to deal with this, and you never will be. So yeah, it was from a movie reference with Tom Cruise, but yeah.
Handling these types of attacks, you just can't do it on your own. I mean, that's why the addiction is like, if you could have gotten out of it on your own, then you would have done it a long time ago.
And part of my own, woundings from my past and stuff deal a lot with, me wanting to be in control. The vows that I made in my past, that I can't trust other people, and I have to be the one that I've got to take care of things on my own and be there for myself. And so God speaking that to me was speaking directly to that brokenness in my life of, you're not equipped to be in control. You're physically not equipped. You don't have the organs to understand all the crap the enemy is throwing at your life, and you need to be able to lean on me to be able to do this for you.
Needs something supernatural is what you're saying.
So yeah, that was something he's been speaking to me recently.
So everyone, I don't care who you are, needs help. Needs help to break the bondage.
Oh yeah.
So one way is counseling and support group.
Yeah. And I will say too, I think, if you're an alcoholic, there's, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a 7-step program to get out of it. And there's ways to probably get out of pornography if you're not a Christian, you want to try and power through this in your own strength. But it is so much more effective if you lean on that supernatural relationship you have with the Lord. You've got the Holy Spirit on your side to help you through this. It's just so much more effective a way of dealing with this because of that, the nature of being a Christian and that relationship you have with the Lord.
Yeah.
You know, lean into that, use that. I mean, he wants to partner with you and see you whole and healed from this. That's his heart for you, is not for you to stay in that broken place.
He's your best friend in this type well, in any situation, but
Yeah.
especially in this type
He's
of
not
situation.
he's not the police officer with the billy club standing up there and, bonk, and he's messed up again. It's hey, let's do this together. I'll show you how to do it. Let's hold my hand and let's walk this out.
So that's 2 ways to support the addicted person to break the bondage. There's a third way, and that is for the spouse who has been offended. Man, if I had come at you with shame and that billy club, it's very tempting. Okay.
Sure.
I will say it's very tempting.
Yep.
But shame is again, that's the driver that can push somebody back into
Keeps you in that cycle.
the cycle of addiction and continuing to try to search for a dopamine hit that drives them further and further into dependency. So for me to come at you with support, when I ask you, have you been tempted to look at porn? And you say yes. Okay. Have you looked at porn?
You bad man.
Well, if you say, yes, I have looked at porn, and I come at you like, how dare you cheat on me again? How dare you choose another woman again over me? That would be a way to ensure that you stayed in bondage.
Definitely drag the process out.
It'd be a lot healthier for me to go to my counselor and say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. It's not safe for me to verbalize that and express that to you, because that would just perpetuate the whole situation. So there's 3 ways, the outside group, the inner Holy Spirit, and then the spouse, to really help a marriage to come back to a place of thriving.
I do remember, those times when I would come to you and I would, you'd ask, have you looked at porn? And, the times when it was, yeah, honey, I'd have recently, and I think, you would kind of take that for a while, you'd have to process through, okay, and like the conversation would stop for a while, but you were always, from what I remember, you were always faithful to come back to me, and make the conscious, I forgive you.
Yes.
And sometimes it was very rarely like right there in that moment.
Right.
Right. But, yeah, I recall it always like within a 24-hour period, even if you weren't really feeling it, you would make that verbal decision, to me and let me know.
Sometimes it was a statement of faith.
Yes, absolutely.
A lot of times that's what forgiveness is.
Yeah.
It's a statement of faith.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's I think that was a difficult response, but a healthy response.
But here's the next point
Yeah.
toward a thriving marriage is you gave me grace to have the emotions that I had.
Oh yeah.
Because my emotions were very valid. I needed to process.
Yep.
You recognized that. Thank you. And a lot of it was, there was one particular day that I was so much anger rose up in me that I was screaming at you,
Mm-hmm.
and I was saying things that I wasn't supposed to say, like, how dare you?
Yeah.
And you just allowed me to express. You just stood there and allowed me to express my emotions.
And I mean,
So
that
there
was not your typical response to,
No, it
to the
wasn't.
situation.
It
And I
wasn't.
think there was, the Lord was faithful
It was rare.
to allow me in that particular place where I was at that day, where He really needed to express that. The Lord had given me grace that day to be able to stand there and receive that and not defend myself, in it, but let you process through that.
Yeah.
So I do think, again, and this is why I say, you've got the Lord on your side with this, and lean into that relationship and use that. But I mean, I think the Lord will be faithful to set you up. If again, I think our last one down here is prayer. Pray.
Yeah, praying for each other.
Praying is important. Again, you've got to be praying as the one who's done the betrayal. You got to be praying for the one who was betrayed. As the one who was betrayed, you got to be praying for the person who did the betraying. And then I think it's important that you've got to start building back trust and restoring that relationship. And one of the great ways to do that is praying together.
God talked to us several years back about the power of communion within a marriage. So I would say praying for revival of the marriage, restoration of the marriage for each other, with each other, and also having communion together on a regular basis is another. It sounds so simple. Okay, you drink some grape juice and you eat a cracker. What's the big deal? What it does is it realigns our souls to recognize what Jesus did for us. And it realigns us to a point of humility of, wow, I've been extended so much grace and mercy by God. And so when we take communion, it's a physical act, but it also adjusts the alignment of our emotions and our thinking, our thought process goes back to, wait a minute. Yes, this is why I'm remembering what Jesus did on the cross.
Yeah, so that we're not the person who was forgiven 10,000 talents or whatever, and then we're, turn around and we're shaking the guy down
for $50.
For $50 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So communion is a very powerful tool in our tool belt as believers to really see God restore that relationship. There's one other one. We have a decent list here. It's not complete.
Sure.
I would say every couple is going to find additional ways or even better ways for them to work together.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say there's a great deal of trust that's also built not just by being honest, and for the wife to know that she's got an honest husband now is huge. But there's also for the addicted spouse to submit to a counselor and a group to, like, this is how many times we're going to have a phone call.
Yeah.
I'm going to commit to a weekly meeting. I'm going to commit to twice a month going to my counselor.
Whatever that program that you guys have decided is the right fit for you.
Yeah.
Being faithful to that, working through that program, it's an important part of that process. I mean, you're not going to get through this on your own. You can't willpower your way out of this animal trap that you're in. You need help. You need people beside you. You need people that you're accountable to walk this out and supernaturally, I think. So
this builds trust every time you go to that meeting.
Sure.
And every time you go to that counselor.
Yep.
Like it's like, okay, yes, he and she are both very committed and serious about this relationship. We're willing to take the effort. We're willing to invest.
Yep. We're
willing to keep trying.
Yep.
And fighting for each other.
Yeah, and I would encourage too the spouse, the one who's been betrayed, to find a support group as well. I think that's something you were certainly lacking.
Well, I did go to counseling.
Yep.
That was big. That was a very, very important part for sure.
Yep. But I mean, you need a support group or a counselor or somebody where you can process this stuff and bounce your feelings off of. So that's certainly important for both spouses to be able to have.
Yeah. Gaining wisdom from an outside perspective is life-changing. It really does good things. We're going to have the Bixby's on a future session.
Mm-hmm.
They do online counseling, and their whole focus is on restoring families.
Yeah,
they're pretty awesome.
Yep.
We've got their website on our website. We've got a link to their website.
Yep. We were guests on their podcast.
Yeah, they're really neat. Randy and Leslie Bixby. So I hope that these 7 points that we've brought up are a benefit to many couples. And if it is a benefit, man, or if you have another idea, I'd love if somebody has a different idea that's not on this list. It would be fun to hear that.
Yeah. I encourage people to leave comments on the videos that we're posting and stuff.
Absolutely, yes.
Yep. I think these are important points, I think, to just talk through for a couple, as they're starting to start this journey together. And they make the commitment that, we do want to work towards a healed and restored relationship with each other and have that stronger marriage at the end, that weld that is stronger than the original material.
Where the bone was broken, it's thicker, it's stronger right there at that point.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what Jeremiah 29:11 says?
Right here. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future.
We do have a future.
Yeah.
Every marriage has a future.
Yeah. What's
it going to be?
As long as you're willing to put in the work and the effort. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on Hope Reforged. Together, we can break the chains of addiction and rebuild hope. To stay connected, visit us at www.hopereforged.com, where you'll find new episodes, resources, and support. If you found this helpful, please leave us a review and share it with someone who would be encouraged by this podcast. Until next time, persevere, lean into hope, and remember that restoration is yours.